Welcome, everybody, to the JSS podcast. This is the casual executive, Byron Enriquez, your resident finance bro. Um, and this week's episode is going to be a little bit different. We're just going to talk a little bit. I don't necessarily, but kind of working through topics and trying to see what we share. And it's hard. It's hard to kind of come up with topics that, obviously aren't going to be too dry, something that's going to be informative and add value. The point of me doing these weekly podcasts is try to add value, right? And see how I can help, family, friends, or anybody who's listening or anybody who's watching, just give you some ideas of how to be able to get into the real estate market, kind of the state of the economy, finance, and just kind of the world and which we live in. And I know it's things are hard for people, and they're trying to figure things out. There's been a lot in the news lately about a lot of changes. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about that without getting into the politics of it, but yet how that affects people. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to start with is, there's been some rumors out there right now lately that, we're going into this season of the year where things are slower in real estate wise with the holidays and whatnot. But the affordability of the housing market has still been high. I think on average, your average 30-year mortgage rate has been still hovering around the 6.5, the high sixes, um, and affordability is at a standstill. We've been seeing the trends, and I look at numbers and I look at all the data, and we're looking at it's been pretty flat over the last few months, and normally summer months going into August, September, we see some spikes in purchasing activity, getting into homes before the winter hits in certain parts of the country, and we didn't really see as much this year, and it's concerning because it kind of freezes the market a little bit. Our economy is so heavy. Um, Real estate drives a big factor in our economy, so it's obviously has it ripple effects into other industries and other markets. But one of the things that the government has been kind of posing right now, or kind of floating the idea of, is a 50-year mortgage. And I'm not sure how many people have heard of it or not. And the first time I saw it, I actually thought it was a meme, and I was like, oh, that's a joke. Right now on average, we do 30-year mortgages, and even then, 30-year mortgages, it's substantial. It's a huge hit. There's not many other countries operate the same way we do in that aspect of it. But if you think about it, the average first time home buyer right now, I think the last number as of like a week and a half ago was 39, 40 years old for a first time home buyer, which has gone up. Um, so if you factor that in, that first time home buyer, let's just call it 40 years old, and a typical 30-year mortgage, you're 70 years old before you're paying off that house. That's if, and only if, which I'll get into it a little bit afterwards, if they keep that same mortgage for the life. They buy the house at 40 years old, never refinance, never sell, never do anything, they normally will be paying off in 30 years, right? So that's 70 years old. If you change that now to 50 years, we're going from first time home buyer, 40 years old, not being able to pay off their home until they're 90. Just, take that into, kind of factor that in. And yes, and I know, I mean, I can see both sides of it. I can see where people talk about, well, just because we're giving 50-year mortgages, people aren't necessarily going to stay in the home in that mortgage for 50 years, but it does, increase some affordability factors. It helps people get into the homes that they can't afford right now because the interest rates are high. And yeah, but that's just, if you think about it, that's just putting a Band-Aid on the situation, right? Because we're not helping, we're not solving the issues, we're not creating more inventory, we're not lowering rates, and we're not making things more affordable. We're just letting you take longer to pay for it. Which gives you, that's that says a lot. It's very telling about where our economy is and where we are as a country. We're not fixing the issues. We're just burying our head in the sand and hoping that somebody else is going to fix it 15, 20 years from now. So that's a big, I mean, that's a huge factor right now. That's that conversation piece that people are talking about. A 50-year mortgage, that's hard. Now, add to that the average homeowner, I think I talked about it in my last episode, gets into a home late 30s, early 40s. Within the first 5 to 7 years, they're upgrading, going into that medium home. And then once again, they're going into that forever home. And that process could take, 15 to 20 years before they get to that forever home. So if now you're kind of following that timeline where bought their first home at 40, let's just say 10 years into their forever home, now they're 50, and now they're getting that 50-year mortgage, now they're 100 years old, so I don't see how anybody's gonna be paying off their homes. If your average retirement age is 67, 68 years old, it's gonna delay the way people retire, the way we look at retirement, and can people retire at that age? Because, ideally, you're retiring, your home's already paid off, so that when you're, taking your pension or your social security or what have you, it's an easier, pill to swallow because your housing expense is gone. On top of that, now we're, go away from the 50 years and taking forever. One of the biggest things that it does is, for this is the argument against that, where people talk about, well, it's just an affordability thing. 3 or 5 years from now, when the market gets better, rates get better, people are going to refinance. And yeah, maybe if the rates get better, or how much, now we're gambling on the future. It also slows down the rate of growth and the equity that you're building into the property, because now your typical 30-year mortgage, the first 5 years, 5 to 7 years, is very front loaded on interest, and you're paying down interest first before you're hitting into your principal. So you're not building equity into a home until well into the almost 10th year if you're looking at an amortization schedule. And I'm not going to bore people with those spreadsheets, which my favorite. But that equity isn't really starting to you're not really starting to generate equity in that property, until the seventh year forward. So now if you stretch that out again to a 50-year mortgage, that equity, you're not really going to start generating any equity until 12, 15 years, just by some estimates, um, into that life of that loan. So, I mean, that puts a whole nother stress where, again, like I was talking about, the typical homeowner, after 7, 8 years, are upgrading and they're going into their, move up home. Reason for that is because they've gained some equity, and they can use that equity into the purchase, into rolling that equity into the next purchase. But now we're eliminating that, right? We're eliminating that factor, or we're just pushing it down the road, even further and further. So, what's that going to do to our market, to the market, to the housing market? And again, like I said, housing market just ripples into everything. Consumer, travel, just you name it. Moving expenses, construction. Is that gonna change? Is it gonna mean that people are just gonna stay in their home forever now? Could be, right? That's something that could happen. So you're not going to get that repeat business. You're not going to get those repeat clients that are moving and improving on a neighborhood and upgrading, and then what happens to the next generation coming in of first time home buyers? They can't get into the market because those first time home buyer entry level homes aren't going to be available, right? So those are big factors, and to look at. And when you're doing your year end financial review, or what have you, you're kind of taking those factors into consideration. It's a lot. It's a big, and I know for the average consumer, the average American, you're not seeing that, and you're not seeing how that affects the market. And but it's believe me, it's a big factor. That's something that we should really be scared of. Something we should really understand before going into it. I think there's talk also of doing car loans for 15 years. Again, another issue, right? But it's not my specialty, so I won't get into that one too much. But yeah, I mean, look, 50-year mortgages, it's a big deal. And I remember reading some articles that when I forgot which president was, when they introduced the 30-year mortgage, it got a lot of pushback. And now, which 30 years is tough. I there's a lot of opinions on just mortgages in general, but If you think about it, you don't own the property until you're finished paying it off, right? If you're paying rent to the bank, in some variation of it, right? It's some how you approach that. But now if you're just really really dragging that out, so it's a scary thing. But being that, kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about today was a little bit is geared towards maybe some people in the business, people in sales, and people, different walks of life. But you're kind of going into right now. We're mid November ish, going into kind of the slow part of the year, if you will, for business and holidays and parties and things of that nature. And I've seen it. I've been doing this for a long time, 20 something years. Been coaching sales and teaching sales, and one of the things that I always, like to impress on people is, this is not a time to slow down. This is not a time to retreat and just, say make excuses. There's a weekly networking meeting that I go to in the mornings, um, and you can already sense the it's shifting. You can sense the energy from people. You can sense that, oh yeah, we're doing open house. There's less inventory, there's less properties, there's less activity happening. And look, I get it. It's the holidays and we want to have a good time. But this is the, if you don't go into the end of the year, beginning of the year, it's going to suck. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow, for those of us who are in sales. And we're working today on revenue that we're going to make in January, February, sometimes even March. So if you're slowing down now, you're going to feel it that first quarter. And I know many, many, many people in this business or other businesses that are similar, that start first quarter of the year, you feel it. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and just kind of, if it's a motivation, if it's just a kick in the butt, a reminder that, oh, that this time of year is important. This time of year is our opportunity to really make a difference. When others are slowing down, others are shutting down, others are taking breaks and holidays, kick it into high gear. I can't tell you guys how much business I've got over my career, just because I'm available. I've been available during the holidays, and I've been available. Yeah, and I have boundaries, and I'm not saying, it's Christmas and answer the phone. If you have to, I guess you will. I've been generous, been, yeah, generous. I don't know. I've been gracious enough, or I've given myself the ability that I can take those days off now, at times. But it is those are opportunities. I know I don't know how many other realtors or loan officers, or you name it, do business with people sometimes because that's the only person available that day. Sunday morning, Saturday, the weekend, Thanksgiving week. Sometimes people take the whole week off, but there's activity happening. And it's do you want that? Do you want those opportunities, right? So it's just important, I think, to set some clear boundaries, set some goals. I'm huge into goal setting, and really focusing what that the new year is going to bring. But closing out the year strong. I mean, in most sports, if you think about it, I'm a big sports guy. Go Dodgers. I'm a big sports guy, and in every sporting event, always tell you it's how you finish, right? It's that last quarter, that last mile, that last yard, that the last 30 seconds in the game that make the huge difference, right? That's what's going to be, the momentum that you get. Speaking of Dodgers, and speaking of, we just experienced one of the greatest World Series ever. And I think, this World Series, for me, I think a big part of it was momentum. You saw and you felt the momentum shifts between the Blue Jays and the Dodgers, and seeing, which team was going to carry that momentum into the next game, into the net, and then, using that, for that analogy, into our business, taking that momentum that we're generating right now, those activities that we're doing, take that momentum into the next year. It's one of the things that I've always loved about, in this business, is being able to control our own destiny. Being the ones that we can, if we want to outwork everybody. That's one of the things that I've always taught people, and I've told people, it's, I don't necessarily think I'm the smartest guy out there. I don't think I'm the best salesperson. I don't think I'm, uh, you name it, any of it. But I will tell you one thing: I will outwork most. I will make more calls. I will push harder. I will be available. I will be the guy who answers the phone. I will, I'll take that extra mile when others won't. And I've been lucky enough to be able to do this for 20 something years because of that. And I know maybe I'm preaching to the choir, maybe I'm preaching to myself a little bit today, because I know we go into this part of the year where it makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference at who you want to be, what you want to, the goals you want to set for yourself the following year. Maybe I'll do an episode on goal setting and how I've taught people how to set goals for year. And it doesn't have necessarily to be sales. It can be relational and education and self development and different things that you want to do. Because I think that's important. I think one of the questions I was asked once on a podcast that I was being interviewed, it was a finance podcast, and they were trying to they were asking me what's the best investment you can make. And I know they were looking for a very structured answer in the sense of, oh, invest in real estate or invest in mortgage notes or invest in gold or crypto, whatever it was. And I know they were looking for that kind of answer. But my answer to them, and I stand by it, your biggest investment is in yourself. Invest in what you want. Invest in your health. Invest in your education. Invest in knowledge. Learn and be never be satisfied with learning and how much. It's always more. It's always more, and bring it in. And that's one of the things that I love. And this is why I'm trying to do this podcast. It really is to try to educate myself on how to do this. It's not what I know how to do. Educate myself on more topics so I can have some discussions, and hopefully I'm pushing this out into so that when people are listening or watching, that you're being educated and you're getting a little bit, and hopefully I'm triggering your mind to think in those ways where when you're out there thinking, oh, okay, how do I improve? And it cannot be, maybe it's not real estate, maybe it's some sort of other sort of investments. Maybe it's a different type of education that you want to do for yourself, and different type of improvements you want to make in your life. But hopefully, you can, translate some of the things that I talk about into that, right? And hopefully it's motivating people to that aspect to want to be better and want to do better. And I think we, as a whole, as a country, as a human population, we got to do better, right? We got to help each other. We got to guide each other. We got to give each other a hand and be able to help out. There's a lot of opportunities out there and things that we can do. And sometimes it's pretty easy. It doesn't necessarily mean these grandiose, great, huge things. Somebody could just be as easy as opening the door for somebody, or doing something where giving somebody a smile, a leg up, right? So my thing is education and trying to push some sort of knowledge out to people. But it's part of the goals, and it's being a well-rounded person where you're investing in your business, investing in your information, the information you bring in, the knowledge you're having. So there's different avenues. There's books. There's audiobooks. There's conversations. Surround yourself with people that you want to learn from. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, right? And it's okay. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? How many people say that? So anyway, I think I'm just rambling today and just kind of getting things off my chest a little bit, which is okay. And hopefully that there's some value to that still. Hopefully that I'm empowering you guys to do something that's outside your comfort zone, something that's outside, whether that be real estate, whether that be an investment property, whether that be taking an art class, taking cooking classes, or whatever it is. I'm hoping that this is just a vehicle to be able to push people into different aspects and go outside your comfort zone to make a difference. Anyway, that's it. That's all we got for today. We'll be putting out some more topics, and I want to hear from you guys. I know I've said that before, but I do. Feel free to reach out to us. I want to answer some questions. I want to be able to give you information that is valuable and add value to your lives. So if you guys have anything, let me know. We're always available. Thank you.